I was barely 4 or 5 when my world split in two. My parents parted ways, and I found myself bouncing between them. When I stayed with Clara, my mother, we lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment on the ground floor, a place that hummed with the quiet chaos of her new life. I had my own room, a tiny nook at the end of the hall right across from hers, but I rarely slept there. Her bed felt safer, a warm fortress where I'd curl up beside her, listening to her steady breathing. It was summer, the air thick and sticky, and Clara kept her bedroom window cracked open just above the headboard, letting in the hum of crickets and the occasional breeze. One night, I jolted awake, my small heart racing for reasons I couldn't name. Sitting up, I rubbed my eyes and saw our cat, Shadow, perched in the doorway of Clara's room. His silhouette was sharp against the faint glow spilling from the hall. It was odd. Shadow always slept with us, his purring a constant lullaby. As I watched, he padded into my bedroom across the hall and let out a low, uneasy meow. Something felt wrong. I turned to Clara, shaking her awake with tiny, urgent hands. "Mama, something's weird," I whispered, my voice trembling. It took her just a few seconds to stir, but when we both looked back to the doorway, the air turned to ice. There he was, a man, tall and silent, stepping out of my bedroom into the hall. His shadow stretched long and jagged, a nightmare come to life. Clara didn't hesitate. With a strength I still can't fathom, she scooped me up and hurled me through the screen window, the flimsy mesh tearing under my weight. She followed an instant later, tumbling onto the grass beside me, her breath ragged as we screamed into the night. Someone nearby heard us, thank God, and called the police, their sirens cutting through the haze of terror. The cops came, searched the place top to bottom, but found no broken locks, no shattered glass. The front door hung ajar, unlocked, though Clara swore she'd bolted it tight with the deadbolt and chain before bed. They figured he'd slipped out that way, a ghost vanishing into the dark. A week later, Clara was scrubbing down the kitchen when she yanked open the water heater closet. Her gasp pulled me over, and there it was, a battered notebook scrawled with names and crude sketches, a pair of worn gloves, and a scatter of gum wrappers. Evidence of an intruder who'd lived among us, waiting. The police came back, but all they could do was guess. He'd hidden there, biding his time until we slept. A shadow we never knew was watching. It was an ordinary day, the kind where chores pull you along like a tired current. I was down in the basement, wrestling with a pile of laundry, the hum of the washing machine a dull companion. Our basement's an odd beast, split in two by a flimsy wall and a creaky door. The laundry room's on one side, bright enough with its flickering bulb, but to reach the stairs, you've got to cross the other half, a cavern of shadows where the only light hung like a frail promise. That day, it gave up, popped and died, plunging the far side into a thick, inky black. I finished folding the last shirt, dread pooling in my gut as I eyed the dark stretch ahead. The silence was heavy, pressing down, and I steeled myself for the walk. Grabbing the basket, I stepped out of the laundry room, my sneakers scuffing the concrete. Halfway across, it hit me. A sound so raw and wrong, it froze my blood. A cackle, sharp and guttural, erupted right behind me. Picture a witch's laugh, but drag it through decades of smoke and ruin. Deep, hoarse, and dripping with malice. It wasn't human. Couldn't be. Yet it was close. Too close. Like it was breathing down my neck. I didn't think. I ran. My legs yearned, the basket crashing to the floor as I bolted for the stairs, heart slamming against my ribs. I didn't stop until I hit the top, slamming the door shut and leaning against it, chest heaving. The house was empty, lifeless, And I waited, ears straining for that sound again. It never came. When Henry, my dad, got home hours later, I trailed him back down, clutching a new bulb like a talisman. We swapped it in, the light flooding the space, revealing nothing but dust and old boxes. No trace, no echo, just silence. I've never heard that cackle since, and I've kept it locked inside me, a secret too wild to share. Even now, I tread that basement carefully, half expecting the dark to laugh again. A couple of years back, my friend Hannah shared a story that still sends shivers down my spine. She's in her early 20s, a soft-spoken English tutor, living in a bustling corner of South Korea. One humid evening, she was working late with one of her students, June, a lanky high schooler with a knack for last-minute cramming. The session dragged on past midnight, and when the buses stopped running, June found himself stranded, his home too far to walk. "Can I crash here tonight?" he asked, his voice edged with exhaustion. "I'll take the first bus out." Hannah hesitated. The idea of a teenage boy sleeping over set off every alarm in her head. It wasn't proper, wasn't safe. But June pleaded, his eyes heavy with fatigue, and against her better judgment, she caved. Her tiny one-room apartment barely had space for two. She climbed into her bed, pulling the covers tight, while June spread a thin blanket on the floor, a makeshift pallet under the dim glow of a street lamp seeping through the window. Sleep came fast for both, the quiet hum of the city lulling them under. Hours later, maybe 2 a.m., Hannah jolted awake to June shaking her shoulder. "I'm starving," he said, his voice cutting through the haze. "Let's grab some food." She blinked up at him, groggy and incredulous. "Food? Now? It's the middle of the night. Go back to sleep." But June wouldn't let up. "I'm serious. I'm so hungry. Let's hit that 24-hour spot down the street." She grumbled, pointing him to a stash of instant ramen in the kitchen, but he brushed it off. "No, not that. Come with me, please." His insistence wore her down, and after a few minutes of back and forth, she relented, tugging at a jacket as they stepped into the cool night air. Barely a block from her building, June stopped dead, his face pale under the sodium lights. "I lied," he whispered, his voice trembling. "I'm not hungry. I woke up and saw something. There's a man sleeping under your bed." Hannah's stomach dropped, the world tilting beneath her feet. They called the police, their shaky voices echoing down the empty street. When the officers arrived and searched her apartment, they found him, a disheveled stranger, curled up beneath her bed, his presence a silent violation. He'd been living there for 2 months, slipping in and out, unnoticed, a ghost in her sanctuary. June only caught him because the floor gave him a clear line of sight, a stroke of luck that saved them both from something far worse.